Arratsaldeon, ¿se me escucha?
Sí.
Pero no se me ve.
No.
Arratsaldeon, ongi etorri, eskerrik asko, etortzeagatik. Bueno, lo primero, quisiera pedir disculpas por no estar ahí con vosotros, que me hubiera encantado, pero bueno, por una serie de razones todavía estoy en Vitoria y no he conseguido llegar a Bilbao, así que pido mis más sinceras disculpas. Para mí es un placer darles la bienvenida a estas jornadas dedicadas a la prevención y la detección temprana del cáncer de pulmón, enmarcadas en el proyecto LUCIA, una iniciativa europea financiada por Horizonte Europa dentro de la misión. Y estamos absolutamente convencidos, ahora más que nunca, de que el formato de la investigación y la formación integral de nuestros profesionales mejoran nuestra capacidad para ofertar servicios a los. Todos los sistemas de salud afrontamos, como sabéis, enormes retos con quien compartimos el compromiso de seguir impulsando la prevención.
Arratsaldeon denori, ongi etorri para nuestro departamento. Gracias también a ti, Susana, por tus palabras y por el trabajo compartido que desde Osakidetza lideráis cada día en favor de la salud pública en Euskadi. Me gustaría sumarme a esta bienvenida con el firme convencimiento de que la prevención y la detección precoz del cáncer de pulmón deben ser una prioridad compartida por todas las instituciones sanitarias. Desde el Departamento de Salud del Gobierno vasco apostamos decididamente por el desarrollo de programas de cribado basados en la evidencia, por la investigación orientada al impacto social y por un modelo de salud que integre a pacientes, profesionales y al conjunto de la ciudadanía en el diseño de soluciones innovadoras. Fiel reflejo de ello son los exitosos programas existentes en nuestro medio de detección de cáncer de mama, colorectal, cérvix, así como también de anomalías congénitas, el programa de detección precoz de cribado neonatal, que nos han permitido abordar patologías de manera temprana, más efectiva, más eficiente y, lo que es más importante, con mejor calidad, trabajando para una mayor esperanza de vida. Además, el Plan Integral de Cáncer en Euskadi, que va a ser presentado, esperamos, antes del verano, ya que se encuentra en su edición final, precisamente como su nombre bien indica, pretende abordar de manera integral e integrada una prioridad para nuestro sistema, ni más ni menos que la primera causa de mortalidad en Euskadi, el cáncer. Esto no se puede hacer sin una aproximación holística que incluya la promoción, la prevención, el diagnóstico temprano, el tratamiento, la rehabilitación y el acompañamiento de las personas y su entorno. Y que incluya además todos los niveles de asistencia, como es nuestro sistema de provisión de servicios, sostenido en la comunidad y con servicios hospitalarios de excelencia. El proyecto LUCIA representa esta visión. Una Europa que colabora, que investiga y que pone el foco en la mejora real de la salud pública. Euskadi quiere ser parte activa de este esfuerzo común. Gracias a todas las personas que hacéis posible este encuentro, estamos convencidos de que del diálogo entre ciencia, sistema de salud y sociedad surgen las mejores respuestas. Eskerrik asko etortzeagatik.
Lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer-related deaths worldwide, with significant emotional, social, and economic impact. The major issue behind it is the late diagnosis of the disease, as well as the lack of understanding why lung cancer initiated or progresses.
LUCIA aims to improve early detection, prevention and management of lung cancer by identifying and understanding a broad range of risk factors. The findings will support evidence-based policymaking and contribute to Europe's Beating Cancer Plan. The project employs advanced technologies like artificial intelligence and multi-omics analyses to develop predictive models to identify risk factors for lung cancer screening.
At Bicontech, we are developing artificial intelligence models that leverage electronic health record data at the population level to identify people at risk of having lung cancer, and we are reaching accuracies of 94%, which we will further validate in data coming from other centers. Additionally, we are also developing radiological image analysis tools to enable the better characterization of lung nodules and their follow-up a long time, and we are also trying to correlate the radiological image appearance with molecular subtypes for better clinical decision-making.
A major challenge in lung cancer screening programs is the limited availability of efficient diagnostic tests for early and accurate detection. This gap often leads to delayed diagnosis, reducing the chances of successful treatment and survival. The other main challenge of LUCIA is to test innovative and easy-to-use tools to help detect lung cancer early. The breath analyzer device manufactured by Nanos uses a special sensor chip made with gold nanoparticles, which are modified to detect specific molecules in the breath. The wearable sensor patch developed by Technion uses different sensors to detect volatile organic compounds emitted from skin and sweat. These sensors use conducting nanomaterials to follow up on changes in VOC biomarker profiles potentially related to lung cancer. Pronat Medical did the dedicated skin interface design and construction for the patch. The SPOC device developed by Technion is a small, smart device that detects volatile organic compounds, VOCs, from the headspace of blood samples using nanomaterial-based, tandemly organized, printed sensors.
Volunteers for LUCIA project are essential. Their participation provides real-world data needed to understand better lung cancer risk factor and to test new innovative early detection tools.
Para nada pensaba en que podía salirme alguna cosita, de hecho siempre he pensado que mi capacidad pulmonar es tremenda.
Yo estaba bien, yo no hubiera ido nunca al médico.
Creía que estaba totalmente sano.
Menudo flash, no, lo pasé muy mal.
Primordialmente a mí me movió muchísimo dejar de fumar, que es lo que hice, evidentemente. En el primer día, catapum, dejé de fumar.
Llevo un año con bastante tos. Y entonces dije, pues esta es la mía.
Lo que más me duele es que el entorno me cuestione si puedo o no puedo hacerlo. Ya lo tengo apalabrado, es el saltar en parapente y cumplir una de las ilusiones que tengo por hacer.
El hecho de venir y de saber que estoy tan bien cuidada y que cualquier cosita que me vaya a salir me vais a avisar, me genera muchísima tranquilidad.
Miedo, yo creo que no he tenido nunca, siempre hay que dar un paso adelante.
Estamos muy contentos y muy agradecidos porque gracias a ello, pues es lo que te digo, que se la ha podido detectar a tiempo.
Y hoy me han dado la buenísima noticia tras operarme y demás, que estoy limpio.
Creo que todos estos proyectos, pues bueno, tarde se están haciendo muchos de ellos, pero bueno, bienvenidos sean y que sigan adelante.
LUCIA me ha dado vida, para mí LUCIA es vida.
Without their involvement, this project wouldn't be possible, as it relies in their contribution to the development of more accurate, effective and personalized preventive and screening strategies.
So, thank you. Muchas gracias por participar en el vídeo. It was really an amazing experience to make this video with them, so that's why they are all of them with us today. making part of this event. So I'm going just to talk a little bit about cancer burden. I think we are all aware about this, all that we are in this place. In 2022, 20 million new cases of cancer were diagnosed. And the worst thing is that a lot of them, almost 50%, are preventable. So something else more we have to do just to try to prevent more cancer. Regarding lung cancer, in 2022, 2.5 million new cases of cancer were diagnosed. We know already that is the first cancer in deaths in 2022. The risk in the general population is 1 to 16. It causes more deaths than colon and breast together. And what we know is that if we diagnose cancers in early stage, it improves a lot the survival. And another thing that we have to be aware is that lung cancer more and more appears in younger people. And the prevision for 2050 is that it's going to be improved to 4.6 million new cases. Regarding the epidemiology, in Europe is the fourth cancer in incidence and the first one in mortality. In Spain is the second one in incidence and first one in mortality. And talking about the Basque Country is the fourth one in incidence and first one in mortality. We know already, that there are some risk factors that they are related with the development of lung cancer. We know about tobacco, but we have to be aware even more about second-hand smoking. Also about healthy habits, exercise and healthy diet, and exposure to different toxic places. Also family history, genetic factors, and disease that predispose like COPD, and also the age. And talking about secondary prevention, about screening programs, talking about mortality is the first cancer in mortality, and 1 new case is diagnosed every minute. And we know that from those, 1 to 7 will be diagnosed only in early stage. So in Europe, it's a new mandatory aware that member states should explore the feasibility and effectiveness of implementing lung cancer screening programs using low-dose compute CT scan. But we have to identify which is the target that is at high risk in order just to implement a proper screening program. And what Europe has said is that we should start by current and ex-smokers aged from 50 to 70 and with a study of 30 package years. There are many challenges in implementing lung cancer screening programs. We know that one is more identification of new biomarkers. We have to reduce sex and racial disparities. Also, implementation of smoking cessation adherence. Standardization on risk model based on artificial intelligence. And there is a really big challenge in implementing a low-dose CT scan. We have to be aware that it's a test that has a minimum, but it has a minimum harm. There could be problems with cost effectiveness, also to who should go to a CT scan, a low-dose CT scan, and as in another screening programs, the overdiagnosis, the false positive, and the incidental things that appears in the scans. So in this scenario is working a LUCIA project. We know, we are aware that we have a high burden disease. Lung cancer is a high burden disease. Talking about the premises that a screening program has to have. And we know that LCT scan, we have here Carmen that is going to talk about, that has a big expertise in this, they are working a lot, that is good. I mean, is effective identifying early stages, and it has proven benefits. But we know also that it could give harms to the citizens, to the general population that in principle are not are healthy people. And also it can have problems of resources and infrastructures. And which is the real target population for an screening programs, because we have more and more younger people and never smokers in cancer, in new cancer diagnosis. So in these challenges, one we think in LUCIA that is critical is that we have poor knowledge of risk factors and cellular processes associated with lung cancer. So we should establish risk factor assessment tools for lung cancer early detection, including less frequent forms of lung cancer, to try to understand better how it develops. LUCIA project works in two clusters. One is understanding risk factors and determinants in mission cancer, and is trying to develop a toolbox, trying to implement the understanding of these new factors in three scenarios: in personal risk factors, in external risk factors, and in cellular process. And we are trying to develop a tool just to stratify the population with a risk score in order to improve the early detections of a general population. For that, we are recruiting general population from 40 to 80 years, women and men, never smokers and smokers with no history of lung cancer and no history of other cancer in the last 5 years. If we are measuring the risk score, and if we identify that the population is high risk, we perform a CT scan. And if we diagnose a lung cancer or an indeterminate nodule, then we do a different pathology and different artificial intelligence approaches to try to know more about those cellular patterns in developing lung cancer. Till today, we have finished the first visit of the recruitment of LUCIA volunteers. We have already 2,875 participants. We have, of those, 24% are never smoker or reduced smokers. We have 12% of them are hard to reach population, because it's really important just to be aware of those in the implementation of a new screening program. And more than the half are women. We have performed 1,207 CT scans, and this is what we have obtained, we have diagnosed in LUCIA project. We have different numbers with nodules, with different stages of Landra's nodules, but we have identified 27 in Landra's 3, 3 in Landra's 4, and 4 lung cancer patients, 3 of them in stage 1. Talking about these 4 participants, 3 of them, from the 3 that they have been diagnosed in early stage, couldn't make the criteria that the European Commission is telling us to implement a lung cancer screening program, because 2 of them were smokers for 36 and 24 years. But it's true that they were hand-second smokers. So we have to be aware of these other risk factors in order to implement one lung cancer screening program. So this is all for me. Thank you very much. So now we are going to have 3 panel sessions. We have the honor to have 3 experts at the European level. So first of all, I'm going to introduce Professor Tit Albrecht. Is head of the Center for Healthcare at Slovenia's National Institute of Public Health and president of the European Public Health Association, a senior researcher in health services, policy and system research. He has focused on health workforce, patient morbidity and cancer control since 2006. He led work on the European Guide on National Cancer Control Programs and coordinate the Joint Action Cancun. Currently, he co-leads Work Package 4 of Joint Action, EUNET CCC, and is an assistant professor at multiple Slovenian medical faculties. So I give you the floor.
Thank you for the invitation. Really happy to be here on a topic that is very challenging. It's, as Eunate explained, a huge public health. A major public health challenge, but it has many faces. For many years it was connected only to one etiology, and this was placed at a very high level. Today we try to look in a broader perspective which has been already outlined. Just to mention, also in my country we will carry out a pilot project on lung cancer screening this autumn, following the recommended the high-risk approach in smokers. I don't have to explain to this community, of course, the epidemiology. There has been a clear overview. I still remember my youth, my high school days. The approach was prohibitive, the approach was repressive. So my classmates that were smokers were invited to special lectures by pulmonologists who explained to them how terrible lung cancer is and why should they stop smoking. I asked many of them why how they felt after that lecture, and they said they were completely indifferent, of course, especially at that age. So probably not surprising. So this was the traditional approach. Nevertheless, the smoking prevalence changed, and of course the seemingly declining incidence, if we measure it by standardized incidence rates, but in absolute terms is still a very high absolute incidence, especially because the prevalence has extended also into a female population that for a long time and in many countries culturally was behind. Youngsters also have renewed popularity, and one thing that we should touch upon, I know that in Spain there is a strong activity also against tobacco. We should be careful about all tobacco products, not only classical products, cigarettes and cut tobacco and cigars and similar, but also vaping, heated tobacco, because we see now from epidemiological studies that these products are actually conducive to smoking. They just delay youngsters entering smoking by 2 years, and then they will start smoking anyway. The industry promoted these products as alternative for those people who already were smoking. So we have, let's say, the changed paradigms, but this is probably more for the discussion. What is striking in Europe, just as an image, it doesn't matter what absolute numbers are. Of course, we have differences obviously per country in incidence, which is on the left, but you see that the outcomes are distributed a little differently. So how we manage lung cancer is it's usually and generally better managed in Western and Central Europe than in Eastern Europe. Of course, age is important. This was stressed very much so. Of course, this is an estimate of the European Cancer Information System. So we have 12.3% of cancers between 45 and 64, and about 12.2% after 65 years of age. Gender differences, very striking, very important. We see that in some countries there is still a huge gradient between men and women. You can see here maybe, for example, Croatia, more than almost 3 times the rate in incidence in men compared to women. And in some countries, like for example the Netherlands or Denmark, the incidences are very, very close by, which means that also the burden on mortality is going to be very important also in women. I remember myself, 30 plus years when I was finishing my studies, in women, lung cancer was place number 9 in incidence. Now it is place number 3. So this is and absolute incidence is 6 times bigger than it was then. These are deflections from EU averages in some countries. So how big and it's about mortality. So how much bigger the mortality is in some countries. As you see here, we have Hungary, Poland, and Croatia in the front line, but we also have Denmark and Netherlands. So it's not something that you could only say, well, yes, it's a problem of Eastern Europe or Southern Europe. It is distributed, let's say, a little bit across the continent. It mainly reflects the aggressiveness of anti-tobacco policies. I have to be this biased because you see at the bottom, you see Finland and Sweden with very low prevalence rates of smoking. This is not something that we need to repeat, so I will just basically skip it. Of course, public health policies need to include taxation of tobacco, limiting exposure. Renate mentioned passive smoking, which is of course something that many countries addressed by limiting exposure to indoor tobacco in the first decade of this century. Smoking quittal support is also very important. We just cannot say, well, now it's forbidden to smoke almost everywhere, but we have to accept that especially heavy smokers are addicted because of nicotine in tobacco, and we need to develop supportive programs for quittal. And of course, restricting access to tobacco products to children and youth. But there are other etiologies of lung cancer. They are overshadowed, and they have been mentioned, and I'm happy to see that this project is focusing, of course, on other etiologies. Radon, south of my country, almost the entire south of my country, in some parts of the West, are heavily burdened with radon. Most of the urban areas are not, but nevertheless, not everybody lives in the cities, so this is a problem. We have small particle problems. Asbestos, sometimes we think that we have regulated it totally, but it can still be present in products imported from other countries that have lower level of regulation, and we have issues with heavy metals. Then, of course, there are genetically inherited lung cancers, about 8% of all non-smoking cancers, which is, of course, another focus we should not forget about. Screening for lung cancer. You will hear more about this from my colleague, and there is, of course, enough evidence to demonstrate effectiveness of screening for lung cancer in certain categories of population. So it's a very targeted screening. I mean, effectiveness has been proven in targeted groups. Of course, it's also clear that people who had occupational exposure to known carcinogens, they are also relatively easy to monitor because at least you know what industry they have been working with. Nevertheless, there are challenges. How to motivate smokers to participate in prevention programs. I found out it was not easy to find. Our neighbors in Croatia started in 2020, not a good year to start a screening program, but they started campaign-based, so not invitational, but campaign-based screening programs for lung cancer. In 3 years, they screened 22,000 people. That's about 5% of the target population. That's very, very little. So campaign-based, I personally do not believe that that's more than almost random or opportunistic. Difficulties in screening for lung cancer exclusively due to environmental exposure are something that needs to be further studied, and especially in environments where there is exposure to certain pollutants, like the cities with high levels of particle pollutions. There are behavioral aspects. Of course, in Slovenia, in my country, we have a program where we support chronic patients and people with lifestyle challenges, let's say obesity, alcohol problems, tobacco addiction, by a nurse team as part of the general practitioners team. Nevertheless, this means that once you accept this offer, you are going to be invited every year for a visit. And some people dislike that. However, if we want to monitor what is going on in the population, we cannot just stay at the aggregate level. We have to solve the problems of health and life insurance issues, stigma at workplace and beyond, and of course sentiments of guilt and responsibility due to your own bad habit and addiction. I think it's necessary to perform additional research in order to reach new populations at risk, or let's say known populations at risk, but with different strategies of how to mobilize them, especially addressing the new or parallel tobacco products, supporting and monitoring smokers and incentivizing screening, and stronger work on environmental protection measures and protection of workers exposed to carcinogenic substances. I think it's possible to work on comprehensive and intelligence systems to provide populations at risk instruments to assess their potential risk, empower primary care providers to work actively with people at risk, and develop further research and assess the risk for those people who have been or were in the past exposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tit. So I'm going to introduce our colleague, Carlen. It's really honored to have you here. He's an associate professor in public health at Erasmus University Medical Center in Rotterdam. She specializes in lung cancer screening and early detection, playing a key role in the Nelson trial, which advances global understanding of low-dose CT screening in high-risk populations. She coordinates the 4 in the Land Run project under Horizon Europe, a clinical trial with 26,000 participants. Her work focuses on evaluating the impact, benefits, and risk of population screening. She has supervised multiple PhD students and contributed extensively to scientific literature. So please, give you the floor.
Yes, thanks. Thank you for the nice introduction and the invitation to be here. I think that I can skip this one because you all know, of course, this one. Maybe that this is. It's not. The pointer is below, but no. Okay. We will continue with this one. This is something that we published a while ago, but it really shows how lung cancer screening works. And what you can see here is the sensitivity of, and I only see the pointer at, okay. You can see the differences in sensitivity when you compare chest X-ray and a CT scan. And especially the early stages, stage 1, you can see the differences in the sensitivity of the screening modalities. So the CT scan is much more sensitive to detect the early stages of lung cancer compared to the chest X-ray. So that was also the reason why they didn't find any working mechanism of lung cancer screening before the use of the CT scan. This is also the mean preclinical stage estimates based on modeling to show actually, you can see the AD is adenocarcinoma, squamous cell, small cell, and other. You can see the expected time that lung cancer needs to develop from the one stage to another stage. So what you can see is that in men that we have about 3 to 5.5 years to detect the lung cancer earlier. And in women, this can increase till about 6 years. So that is your window that you might can early detect the disease. Then a little bit about the Nelson trial. In the Netherlands and Belgium, we started the Nelson trial around 2003, 2004. We randomized almost 16,000 people to lung cancer screening by CT scanning or no screening. And we provided CT screening in year 4 times, and then with different screening intervals. We started with 1 year, then 2 years, and then 2.5 years. And after 10 years of follow-up, we measured the differences in lung cancer mortality. What was different in the Nelson trial as compared to, for example, the American, the National Lung Screening Trial, the NLSD, is that we used the volume of a nodule and the volume doubling time, the growth. And by the use of also an extra CT scan, the indeterminate screening test results, we were able to lower the referral rate dramatically. So that was also good, of course, for all follow-up procedures, but also for participants to decrease anxiety and that kind of things. What we saw is that we really refer about 2% of the participants to the pulmonologist for additional workup and diagnosis, and about almost half of them were really diagnosed with lung cancer. This is the differences between a screen group and a control group in the early stage lung cancers, and in a screening group, and this is after 10 years. So that is also why you see the bar a little bit higher in the screening group, because that was after 10 years, and the smaller bar is what we found during the screening rounds. And what you can see here is that already stage 1 increased to almost 60% early stage lung cancers. And when we compare it with the usual care group, it was only about 13%. I think that you all know these, but these are, of course, the lung cancer mortality graphics from the American trial on the left-hand side and a Nelson trial. And what you can see is that already after some years, after about 1.5 years, so the lines are increasing. So what you can see is that the effect of lung cancer screening starts already in an early phase in a trial, and after sufficient follow-up to have also enough power, of course, to show any benefit, you can see that there is a significant difference between the screening group and a control group, referring the lung cancer mortality. Then, of course, we have always the discussion. People ask us, but you are not showing the all-cause mortality reduction. But yes, that is true. But the NLST and the Nelson trial weren't powered for showing that result. And yes, indeed, the NLST showed an effect on the all-cause mortality, but that was also a little bit, what you can say, lucky. But if we really would like to have enough power to show that, then we need about 50,000 to 100,000 participants per arm. So that's not a trial anymore. What was important here is that we didn't find a shift in other cause mortality in both groups. So if there were, for example, less lung cancer deaths in a screening arm, but there was a huge increase in, for example, cardiovascular disease mortality, then you can say, okay, is this a real effect or not? But those other cause mortality was actually comparable between groups. What you can see here also is that with, of course, the early stage detection, that based on the Nelson and the NLST, that the chance to be cured is much higher as we compared with the those people who are not screened. So in the EU in September 2022, it was the first time that the EU advised, actually, of ELK, showed that there was a strong scientific basis to start implementing lung cancer screening. So that was for the first time that it was really recognized that there is evidence that lung cancer CT screening can reduce lung cancer mortality, but of course there are also a lot of other practical issues. So when we not only look at the EU, but also the United States and United Kingdom, then we can see that in the other countries there is already a recommendation, and they started with implementing. And in the EU it's different per country. So yes, the statement is that we can explore the feasibility of implementing CT screening, but it differs between countries. And this is a little bit, this is also a timeline. This is to show the timeline of a new screening program. It started in the 1970s early, with comparing the chest X-ray and sputum cytology, and now we are in 2025 trying to implement lung cancer screening. So then you can see the timeline for such a new program. In Europe, as already a little bit said, we have, of course, several countries that are implementing national screening, are close to implementing national screening, or have pilots and so on. So Croatia and Poland are, I think, the countries with the highest number of people screened already. And of course we have also the UK, of course, but for example also in France there is already implementing but also Germany and so on. So it's coming more and more. More and more countries are preparing, but there are a lot of practical issues and challenges actually that are different from other cancer screening programs to implement. So this is of course the lung health check from the UK. They have, I think, the largest rollout after the US. In about 2020 or 2021, we started with the 4 on the Lungman trial. This is an implementation trial, so it's not anymore that we would like to provide evidence about the effectiveness of lung cancer screening, but the question is how to implement and how to deal with all challenges that we have with this new type of screening actually. We aim to screen 21,000 high-risk individuals across 5 European countries. We selected the very high-risk population that has everything to do with our power that we need to answer some research questions. So we invited people aged between 60 and 79 years with a very high risk of developing lung cancer. And we try to develop and implement the most optimal and personalized CT screening program for this high-risk population. And of course, we also look at the integration of, for example, smoking cessation support. We are live in all countries, so that was positive. It was a whole, each country has their own challenges and so on, but we can say that we are live in all our screening centers. And our key issues that we would like to research are, for example, the invitations. The recruitment of people for lung cancer is different from breast cancer, colorectal cancer screening, because we need a 2-step recruitment actually, because there is a need for a risk assessment. If we have breast cancer screening, for example, then we can just select from, for example, population registries based on age and gender. You can invite people, but of course for lung cancer screening that's not enough. We also need some background information. We need information about the risk factors. So that is one challenge. And the other challenge is that the target population for lung cancer screening is also less likely to participate in preventive programs, and they have more often a lower health literacy and more often some resistance for participating, and are more often lower educated. We can see in our national cancer registry that based on the postcode, the lung cancer incidence is in the more deprived areas higher. So we tried for each country to come up with the most practical, but also the best way how to reach those people, how to inform them, because you also would like to that people are able to make an informed choice. Then we are investigating the screening, the most optimal screening intervals. Why? Because at this moment, based on the modeling studies, annual screening is most optimal. But if we think about that, annual screening between 50 and 75, for example, that are a lot of scans. But what we also know is that when at least the first scan is negative, the risk for developing lung cancer in the next year is somewhat lower. So the idea is that it might be safe enough to prolong the interval for the baseline negatives to, for example, 2 years. But with the natural history of lung cancer, we don't know exactly. So that is why we also have that in a randomized part in our trial to come up with enough evidence whether it is indeed safe enough, whether we still have the early stage lung cancers when we prolong the interval for the baseline negatives to 2 years. So I haven't the results yet, but we are now in Volendam investigating that part, because of course for the cost effectiveness of lung cancer screening, it really matters when you have, for example, 60-70%, maybe more, that you can screen biannually instead of annually. And we, of course, would like to integrate smoking cessation support. And I haven't another slide about that, so that's the reason that I would like to tell you now. We are also doing focus groups, questionnaires, and so on. And what we really see among participants is that everyone agreed upon that smoking cessation support should be there, should be provided. You cannot implement lung cancer screening without smoking cessation support. So everyone agreed upon that. But when we step by step go to the question, may I ask you, can I invite you for that support for smoking cessation? Then a lot of people said, for me, I don't know. So they agreed upon that it is a good idea, but when you ask, is it a good idea for you? Then the opinions are a little bit different. And I can imagine that, because who are eligible for lung cancer screening, that are people with a long-term smoking history, and all of them tried to quit smoking somewhere in the past and didn't succeed. So it's not that they didn't want it, but they have a history. A very quick overview of our study protocol. We based on per country on several recruitment strategies. We came up with the target population. People are aged 60 to 79 years. They smoked at least 30 pack years or more and quit smoking less than 10 years ago, or they had a PLCO risk of 2.6% or higher, so it's really a high-risk population. All of the people received at least a baseline scan, and if the baseline scan was negative, then they have after that or 2 annual screenings or 1 biannual screening. And of course, if it is positive, then of course we refer them to the pulmonologist. For the recruitment, we take a little bit of risk. We have in the Netherlands we did a randomization in recruitment, and we have the one arm was the kind of control arm. Everything was on paper. All information, the questionnaire for the risk assessment, but also, of course, the informed consent form in our case. Everything was printed and sent to their home address. But then we also had 2 online groups. And of course, you can think, what are you doing? 60 to 79, so you try to go online. But yes, that's also the future. We also were in the corona pandemic, so we thought we have to do this and we have to try this, because that would be helpful if that is also possible. So we also had 2 online groups. One group was just a standard online group. We sent them a 1-page letter and asked them to go online. And at that website, all information was just put online as a PDF and just some information buttons, and that was a very simple website. Then we also had a tailored website, and on that website people can navigate through the website, but there was also, for example, a decision ad that we built based on behavioral change models, so that they're based on questions and answers that they were provided with relevant information. And on that website, you can also, for example, do a self-test, or you can also look at a video or so. So there were a lot of ways to get your information. And based on the first results that we are now also, are in the phase of writing our draft manuscripts about this. We were able to recruit that lower socioeconomic group. So that was, of course, a risk, but we were again, actually, because also with the Nelson trial, we saw that we were able to recruit them and to inform them. And what was surprising was that the tailored online group show actually very good results. So yes, it was a risk at the beginning, but we were very happy that we, even although all risk, that we tried it, because it was really helpful. And in the standard group, we saw that we have a higher response rate, but when we look at how many people are really eligible, then it was quite comparable. So the question is whether we would like to receive a lot of questionnaires returned from people who are not eligible, or that we are fine with an electronic variant that we have comparable results. So that was for us very supportive to see this. And what we also saw was we also investigated the informed decision making, and the highest level of knowledge was actually in the tailored group. So people were better able to get the information that they need, actually. We also had some self-referrals, and we in the Netherlands we are not allowed to use media campaigns, so we were not allowed to go on social media or television or whatever, but they did it themselves. So that is allowed. And what we saw is that a lot of people asked whether they were able to join the trial. So we opened for self-referrals the trial, and we had about 2,500 self-referrals, and about 2,000 people were really eligible. And among those self-referrals, there were a lot of low socioeconomic status group people. So even those people find a way for lung cancer screening. And what was good was that, and of course it's a little bit biased because people were willing to participate in a trial, but we found that almost 85% were able to make an informed choice about their participation. And there were no significant sex differences or gender-related difference, because it was also expected that we might find gender-related differences, but the differences that we can expect seems to be more related to, for example, experience already in healthcare or with diseases or something. So that was not really gender-related, but more related to other life events, for example, of people. Then, with the CT scan, we have done about 80,000 CT scans at this moment. We have just one CT scan, and from that CT scan we can derive the lung nodules, but also the calcium scoring for the heart disease, and we are developing emphysema score. So we are trying to measure 3 diseases at the same time. We use very low dose protocols, so we try to keep the radiation dose as low as possible. And in the diagnostic setting, about maybe 4 patients actually can be screened at the CT scanner, but we are now planning about 10 to 12 per hour, but it's really feasible to have at least 8-9 people screened per hour. So that's really different from the clinical setting. We are using no contrast, no ECG, whatever, so that's also the reason that it can be in that fast. Then this is what we are also doing. First, we have the screening sites. So throughout Europe, we have a lot of screening sites. And at that screening site, there's a local reading by a radiologist, so by a human being. and we have a data management system, and we developed our own protocol, and that's maybe, no, that's not here anymore. We developed a nodule management protocol, and that's more or less like LUNGRADS, but then specific for this trial, and we integrated the whole nodule management system in our data management system. We built also the whole data management system ourselves, and the result is that a radiologist they have to put some details about the volume, the location, some about 5 variables or so, and then the system knows, okay, then this is your screening test result, and then that action will follow. So there will be a letter or so for the screening test results, or there should be a referral, whatever. So based on the whole nodule management protocol that's integrated, the system knows what should happen. But after the first reading, we have also a second reading, that's our AI, and that is using exactly the same protocol, and it's also in the system. The system compares the 2 readings, and if there's a discrepancy between the 2 readings, then a third reading follows, what we are calling that is used by the expert panel, and the expert panel is a group of international experts with expertise on radiology and pulmonology. So based on that expert panel, there will follow a referral or not, and also incidental findings will always discussed by the expert panel, because we also would like to know what incidental findings are found, reported, and what should be followed up and what not. Then this is just a first analysis, and there are coming now more. But what we are now doing is that we are validating the AI, and what we are seeing now is that the AI, in a short conclusion, is AI is performing quite good in saying, okay, this is a negative scan. Saying it's true positive, for example, that's a little bit more difficult for AI. But most of the scans are negative. So if we can rule out the negatives, that really helps, because you can rule out about maybe 70–80%, but a little bit more conservative. Let's say that AI can rule out about between 60% and 80% of the scans because they are negative. That would also be very helpful. And one of the things, some 2 months ago or so, we had a conference, and we had to say that actually it was very disappointing that AI was performing that well above all radiologists with experiences of 30–40 years or so. So that is the future, and of course we are not yet there. More validation is really needed. So we cannot use it already in practice, but based on the first results, on the first thousands of scans, it's really helping that this is the case, that we are really able to see a future for AI in the lung cancer screening. And that's also something that we of course have. We have issues with capacity when you are trying to implement lung cancer screening in a country. So this is very helpful that AI can perform under certain circumstances very well. One of my last slides. What we also did was that we received population level data from the Netherlands, so only Dutch data, about smoking cessation interventions, and we have of course our lung cancer screening impact, and we modeled the impact of on population level on the benefits of live year scans for smoking cessation interventions or lung cancer screening, or a combination. And this is for the foreign lung population. So keep in mind that these people are 60 plus years with a very high risk for developing lung cancer. And of course, smoking cessation works. And the message should always be also for other diseases, stop smoking. But what we also see is that the smoking cessation comes a little bit late. It will not prevent anymore a lot of lung cancers. So with CT screening, we can gain a lot of more life years by the early detection of the lung cancer, because stop smoking is not enough at that point. And this is also, we also see that more than half of our participants of the foreign lung trial already quit smoking. So more and more lung cancers also are diagnosed in people who already quit smoking. So yes, primary prevention is very important, and always the message should be stop smoking, but we also have to be realistic that it's not preventing all lung cancers. And it can prevent lung cancer if it is in an early age. So if we can say we have the next generation is a smoking-free generation, yes, then we can rule out lung cancer. This is the last slide. The development in the Netherlands is now that at the end of March, we finally have a report after about 2 years from the Dutch Health Council, who is actually recognizing the effectiveness of lung cancer screening, but still say, okay, you have to prepare more into more detail the lung cancer screening. So we would like to have more information about how to recruit. Do you have a protocol for reading and so on? And we think yes, we have, but we are now in a phase that we have to provide the Dutch Ministry of Health with all these details. So we at least need some more years to really implement lung cancer screening. But for us, it's not anymore a no, but now we can think about maybe we can implement also lung cancer screening. So that was my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Carlin. And to finish this panel session, we are going to learn more about the European Code of Cancer Against Cancer with David Ritchie. Is a project officer at the Environment and Lifestyle Epidemiology branch in the International Agency for Research Cancer. His work focuses on research to enable cancer prevention and control through translation of research evidence, specifically the update of the European Code Against Cancer, 5th edition, and support for the development of the EU mobile app for cancer prevention. He plays a key role in coordinating research projects and supporting international collaboration aimed at cancer prevention and public health policies. So please, David. Thank you.
Thank you. You can hear me well? No, it's okay. Yeah. So thank you very much, Nyate, for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to be here today. I'm delighted to be able to present to you on the updates of the European Code Against Cancer 5th edition, the ECAC 5 project, which I hope will be of interest for the audience here. Just some words first about the context in which the European Code Against Cancer as an initiative sits within our agency, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, based in Lyon, which is a part of the WHO family of agencies under the umbrella of the UN. The European Code Against Cancer 5th edition, ECAC 5, fits underneath something called the World Code Against Cancer framework. And within this framework, it's the intention to develop a series of macro-regional cancer prevention series of recommendations and projects similar to the European Code Against Cancer. The first of these have been the Latin America and Caribbean Code Against Cancer, which was published in late 2023. And right now we're working towards finalization of the 5th edition of ECAC 5. So that will be the next of this series. Afterwards, who knows, we may have Asia or other parts of the globe. But turning to the European Code Against Cancer itself, it's not actually an initiative of the agency, of IARC, but it's actually an initiative for many years, many decades, of the European Commission, beginning back in the 1980s. So you can see here on the slides the updates that have existed with the 4 editions, the most recent being in 2014. But this actually first begins back in 1987. The first edition was published with 10 recommendations. These are actions you will know about in terms of anti-smoking, limiting alcohol intake, physical activity, diet, nutrition, etc. These type of recommendations are typically there. And then each edition was subsequently updated to keep pace and in line with the scientific evidence as it emerges. So the second edition maintains the 10 recommendations, but adds some extra components to it, notably on organized cancer screening programs. The third edition then introduced for the first time vaccination, with at that time the hepatitis B vaccination included as a recommendation. And then for the 4th edition in 2014, there were new and important topics, some of which have been mentioned earlier in today's session, including the awareness of environmental exposure to indoor radon, and also added a question on HPV vaccination for girls and breastfeeding. So each time the European Code Against Cancer increases the recommendations in line with the existing and most recent robust scientific evidence, and this is what we seek to do for the 5th edition, to continue with this approach. We started with the project in 2022 in terms of developing the new recommendations for ECAC 5. So this is a 4-year project commissioned by the EU from the EU for Health program, which runs until July 2026. What has happened over the most recent years, we've been reviewing with the experts and the scientific experts who were invited to take part in this project the latest evidence to be able to understand how we can update, amend, adapt, perhaps reduce or increase the recommendations to make them relevant to the scientific context of today for this current period. So now we're at the end of the development phase, planning towards a launch of ECAC 5 at the end of this year, but this is still to be determined by the European Commission as the project owners. But hopefully we can make some contribution towards a target within Europe's Beating Cancer Plan of making 80% of the population aware of the recommendations, of the messages that are contained within this type of initiative of the European Code Against Cancer. So if we can have the code launched as soon as possible, this would be a positive aspect for achieving those ambitious goals. Turn into some details of how the code is put together. So if you think about the governance structure that we have for the project, we as the agency are the technical secretariat for this initiative. So here you can see on the right-hand side the scientists and my colleagues who are involved in this project. And our mission is to bring together the scientific experts who will do the review, the analysis, the investigation into the latest scientific evidence that is available to be able to determine and fashion the recommendations that will be a part of the ECAC 5 project. Once the development phase itself is over, we then move towards the dissemination phase, essentially. So this is all what exists post the launch of ECAC 5, which again we are planning for before the end of this year. At this stage, other elements are important. Other organizations and collaborators have a key role within the project. In the development phase, it's really very much the scientific expertise which we're helping to coordinate that has the critical role in terms of reviewing the evidence and coming up with new recommendations. But once this is adopted and improved, we then hand over to the European Commission as the project sponsor, as the owner of this initiative, but also crucially a group we call the Advocacy Group, whose logos you can see here on the right-hand side. So this is the OECD, the Association of European Cancer Leagues, which represents 35 cancer-specific NGOs in Europe. the Regional Office for Europe of the WHO and the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. These groups will then help to be able to fashion and support the effective use, implementation and dissemination of ECAC 5 once it's launched again, hopefully later this year. I mentioned before when thinking about the development phase about the importance of the scientific experts who are involved. And here you can see on this slide that we have in total from the various working groups that look at the different thematic areas that are covered within the European Code Against Cancer. We have from those 5 working groups, 12 representatives each of those working groups, so 60, and they cover a vast number of countries. Actually, we have 20 countries within Europe who are covered with a very broad geographic scope, so we managed to cover most of the European Union member states and some non-EU member states who are part of the European region. And we have a good geographic split as well, complemented by a equal, almost gender split between females and males. On top of the experts who are developing the recommendations, we also have a scientific committee composed of 13 representatives. We're from 12 national institutes, so 12 country members, plus 1 representative of the WHO headquarters based in Switzerland. So I'm very happy that we have here also on the panel, Tits is one of the experts and members of the scientific committee representing the Republic of Slovenia, and Colin is one of the 60 experts that we have in the working groups, focusing of course in the working group that looks at organized population-based cancer screening programs and new forms of cancer screening and early detection. So using these experts' knowledge, experience, insights, and local relevance as well as the technical specifics, we can guarantee the scientific rigor and integrity of the new recommendations. I mentioned also about the stakeholders in terms of the advocacy group, the wider organizations who have been involved in supporting the development of the recommendations. And critically, once the code is launched, will be key to ensure that this is used, implemented, disseminated across Europe. And here are some of the logos of the organizations who we've been liaising with, engaging with throughout this process. So I think this is also very interesting for people in this room to show that we recognize and value the work of civil society, non-governmental groups, patient associations, etc. It is not simply a group, a project that fits with a group of experts, scientific experts, just reviewing papers and so on, that also wants to be engaged with and link out to the wider community, to representatives of various stakeholder groups. And this has been key from the beginning and will become much more important towards the launch and afterwards with the dissemination and implementation of the code in the future. I'll say a couple of words about how the experts have come up with the recommendations that are formally to be translated before the future launch and publication that will come towards the end of the year of the ECAC 5. In general, what we do is to take the best available latest evidence from authoritative sources that we have at the agency, such as the monographs that identify the classification of carcinogens. So at the agency in Lyon, we have a key role to be able to classify, categorize what we call agents. So these can be things from the properties within alcohol, tobacco smoking. It can also be other factors such as night shift working. There are many other elements, categories which we term generally agents, which are evaluated by a series of experts and then categorized in terms of their certainty on how much they contribute as a causal factor towards causing cancer. We have these published very regularly. We do 3 a year at the agency, and we call these the IARC monographs. And these are key documents, key sources of evidence that give us the most robust, the most reliable understanding of what factors are causing the cancer that we see in the population. And we also have other documents, other know-how from handbooks, from guidelines at the European level that give us more information about what can be done to reduce the risk and to prevent cancer. So these broad documents, these authoritative sources are what we look at to be able to determine what should be included as a recommendation within the European Code Against Cancer. And this is the type of evidence the experts are looking at to synthesize, to review, to then be able to craft messages to include in a simple, digestible way up to 50% or say roughly 40% of the cancer burden is preventable through small lifestyle changes plus action at a population level from the political decision makers. So we follow this evidence-driven approach to then be able to come to a consideration of the future recommendations following 4 criteria: the relevance and confidence in the evidence based on those authoritative sources that the expert's knowledge then synthesizes to see that this is a current and timely issue to be included within the code, the suitability and acceptability of taking this action for a broad general target audience. We're not thinking here of very niche target groups where more specific targeted implementations would be needed, but we're thinking of recommendations about areas that affect the broadest number of people. So no doubt we would include and continue to include action against smoking, knowledge about the risks of alcohol consumption, including messages on improving your physical activity, nutrition, etc. All these types of things apply to the broadest number of population. So these are what we look for within this initiative. And then we look at the phrasing to make sure it's understandable, intelligible, not too confusing, because as was stated in Carline's presentation, health literacy is a critical thing, and people at the greatest risk of many times have limited health literacy capacity. Therefore, we have to craft the messages in a way to be able to give them the best chance to be able to adopt and maintain their behaviors in accordance with those recommendations. And then finally, something that's introduced new for this particular version of the code is to complement recommendations for the widest group of people in the general population with recommendations for decision makers, the political level, policymakers, to also take actions to support individuals to be able to follow through on these recommendations. So in the context of tobacco smoking, people are very aware that smoking is harmful for our health and causes cancer, but there must also be the actions at a population level around availability, advertising, taxation, and so on. So these type of approaches are what's needed for the best chance of people to be able to follow the recommendations and maintain them over time. Finally, just to say a few words about the timeline. So as I mentioned, the current edition of the ECAC is ECAC 4, which was launched in 2014. So it is very out of date. It has no mention on lung cancer screening because, of course, in 2014, this was still a research-driven topic. We were far away from implementation. And though the ECAC 4 was launched in 2014, the evidence review and synthesis was done 2 years previously. So you have to go back to 2012 and the state of the evidence that was there at that time. We're very urgently in need of having a new code to represent new developments, such as lung cancer screening, but in other areas too. So we're hoping to have the new code launched by the end of this year. We do, in fact, have the new edition validated, approved by the scientific committee, one member of which is here. And we are now waiting for the formal official translation into all 23 EU languages from the European Commission. So we've gone through a lot of the steps in terms of evidence review, synthesis, creating intelligible, understandable messages, and then having this approved by the committee. And now we're in the final stages here, just awaiting for the green light for the launch. So hopefully in 6 months or so's time, we'll be able to follow up with the new edition of the code, available in Spanish, I'm afraid not a local language, but in Spanish and other EU languages. And this will also be complemented with additional supporting outputs that provide more information about each of the recommendations that are to come in the form of fact sheets, policy briefs. And there will also be scientific articles that will be published in a special edition, which will give you more details, more knowledge about why those recommendations are chosen and what further can be done about it. So thank you for your attention and look forward to the questions.
Okay. Thank you, David. So after these panel sessions, we are going to have the panel discussion So please, the TA experts and the two, we are very honored to have with us a Patients Association. Is with us Verónica Malda is the manager of the Spanish Association Against Cancer in Bizkaia. The association purpose is to lead society's effort to reduce the impact of cancer and improve people's lives. And it's based in Bilbao. And we have also Stephanie Yoyonarte brings awareness to lung cancer as a member of a board of the Spanish Association of Lung Cancer Patients. Of French origin, through with a Sevillian accent, she was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2016, and she contributes to initiative focuses on supporting lung cancer patients and promoting awareness, early detection, and research. So I invite you, all of you, please, to sit here and to moderate this panel discussion. We have Iñaki Gutiérrez, who is Director of Health Research, Innovation and Evaluation of the Basque Health Department.
Thank you.
So thank you, all of you.
So we will try our best in terms of doing some kind of discussion or dialogue. I was looking at, first of all, we are very lucky for many reasons. One of those it is that we have the experts from the academia and organizations, and also we have the experts from the side of the experience and the side of living with cancer in many senses. When I was trying to figure out what to do with this panel, I reached two pieces of news this week. And one was quite interesting, and it was saying 19.3% of the young people between 14 and 18 years old are vaping in Spain. And the second one was tobacco ban in bars and restaurants, terraces, is relaxing in Spain. So I wanted from you first reaction. So we will start from Stephanie. That I discovered that the other two interesting thing it is that both Stephanie and Veronica have Basque in origin, although probably Stephanie did not know.
I know my surname has Basque origin.
I can tell you, because I was trying to figure out which was the origin. I can tell you a little bit more. Okay. But anyway, we will start with that. So 19.3% of the young people between 14 and 18 years old are vaping, and tobacco ban in bars and restaurants, terraces is relaxing in Spain. First reaction and what to do?
Well, what to do is just... the thing is that tobacco gives too much money, and I think anti-tobacco policies are really low in Spain. When the pandemic, they prohibit smoking in the terraces. And then, after 1 year in the pandemic, they just reintroduced smoking in the terraces. I can't really understand how people are smoking everywhere, and we do have to smoke their fumes. And of course, I can't understand vapes. They are selling vapes everywhere, supermarkets, shops, everywhere, and it's terrifying because I'm a lung cancer. I was 35 years old when I was first diagnosed. I'm really lucky because I'm here 9 years later, but my mom was 2 and we didn't smoke. And I think 9 years into this journey, not smoking, lung cancer awareness is not enough. People don't really know what is to have and to suffer lung cancer because they only think smoking is the cause. And there are so many other causes. And I think it's a huge problem. And I'm still seeing it 9 years later.
How do you live that? I suppose that is striking you and some...
No, I only... What can I say? What can I do? I just I advocate. But the thing is that, for example, when I was first diagnosed, I didn't know anything about any other association, yours. But I didn't know about IACAP. So 9 years, I just met IACAP 3 years ago. So that's why I'm advocating, because I think people need to know more about association, and of course lung cancer association is really important. I'm really happy to collaborate and to be here to support.
And Veronica, first reaction and what from the side of the from the Association Against Cancer?
So we have heard it before, so almost around 40% of cancer could be prevented if we ensure environments that facilitate healthy habits. But nowadays, it's not that way. So I think that we need to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to prevent cancer in environments that can facilitate the adoption of healthy habits and to reduce the impact of risk factors such as tobacco, first of all, and others, and overweight. And so I think that we have to really work on that to promote those environments that can facilitate the habits.
And it is just advocating by associations and
no.
what?
No. No, at all, not at all.
So how we can convince the society, because seems to be that is not, and seems to be that parents, we are not doing the role, or we are not playing the role that we were supposed to play.
So I think it's addition of many things. So we need more awareness, we need more preventive measures for sure, and we also need political policies that really regulates, as Stephanie said, so tobacco and stuff. So I think that is an addition of many things. It's not
so one of the questions during these weeks in the newspapers was perhaps we need not just to ban on terraces, but we need to limit in some way. And yeah.
Yeah, but we have legal measures, but they are not respected. They are unknown. I think that when we say that we need more awareness, it's more awareness also on that. So we already have some legal measures, but they are not respected or they are unknown.
Mm-hmm. And Carlene, first reaction, and it happens the same in the case of the Netherlands. We know that the Netherlands it is quite relaxed in some policies at least. I don't know if that happens.
Yeah, and they are a little bit slow also, of course, with all policies. And what we're also seeing is that indeed also vaping is increasing. There is a national initiative from pulmonologists actually that we are calling physician in the classroom, and we try to, and I'm also doing that at the age of 11, 12, that we try to with a 1 hour lesson in a way that it is informative for them, to inform them in an early stage already what's happening with vaping and smoking and so on. But indeed, actually what you need is three things. Is first of all to prevent people to start smoking, and you need a lot of policy actually. And then if people smoking, you really have to try to stop them smoking. And then we have the third one is if all step 2 and 1 and 2 failed, then you have the lung cancer screening. But hopefully, actually policymakers have to do something also, which is very important. And you have also the population impact, because we can try to do our best at the end if the diagnosis is already there. But you have actually the best thing is that we really have to prevent people start smoking. But then you have a tobacco industry that is so much money and so much influence.
So it is a matter of money. As you were describing, it is a matter of the tax relation and
you
money.
Really have to do that. It is also it's proven to be effective, but we know from the 60s that what smoking is doing with your body. So we are now in 2025, so that's a lot of years later. So if you really want to do that as a country, as a European Union or whatever, then you really have to come up with better solution than only the small things.
And Tit, being an expert in this field and also in the area of public health, I will tell you another thing. like 30 years ago, the incidence of lung cancer in the Basque Country, especially in women, was concentrated in high-income areas or socio-economic wealthier areas, but we have seen that it has changed. So nowadays it is the most depressed areas and the most depressed neighborhoods in the Basque region. Nowadays they have a higher incidence of lung cancer and especially and specifically in women. So first reaction and yeah.
Well, I can quote our joint professor, Johann Machenbach, who was researching social determinants in health. There is social mobility with bad habits, and it's actually present in all bad habits. They enter in high classes where at the same time they are, of course, numerically very limited, and then they descend. Unfortunately, this also means that people who are really marginalized, like homeless, asylum seekers, and so on, usually concentrate these bad habits, and you can often.
What about that is people that are living outside the homeless and so on? But what about girls? And young,
I think women, especially now with alternative products, are specifically targeted. Because you present vaping and you present heated tobacco as something that doesn't smell bad, and there were added aromas. So, for example, in my country, since the beginning of this year, we banned all aromas except one, because the industry was insisting, and that's mint. But all the other fancy smells are banned, so they cannot be added anymore. I think if I add to what the colleagues said so far, I think we let the industry run the narrative around the alternative products as safe alternative, but of course they were sold as safe alternative for smokers, not for general population that we understood. And the second thing is what you were saying, it's not regulated. So basically, the industry is using and abusing the position where tobacco has regulation and these products have no regulation. And maybe David will comment with the evidence that we collected in producing the European code, there is actually now population-based research that shows that these products are stimulating young people and others who were not smokers before to start smoking, and that the odds ratio, I think you all know very well, but the epidemiological implications, the odds ratio for youngsters who ever vaped compared to those who never vaped to start smoking is about 4. So it is actually driving youngsters to smoking. And this is one of the reasons I would suggest that in many countries we don't see only the epidemic of vaping, but we also see a rebound in the prevalence of smoking.
And David, what about coding for vaping?
Well, just to pick up on Jit's comments, we commissioned as part of the project a review that looked exactly into this evidence and found that it really is a gateway effect. It really does lead young people specifically to become initiated into smoking regular tobacco products. So this is very concerning. And within the group, we had some splits there too, because there have been alternative views in the research community, particularly in parts of the UK, that's focused on the possibility, the evidence that does exist in some limited form that it can help as a cessation tool for people already smoking to use these types of products. But we were speaking very specifically about young people and trying to ensure that we close out any route, any gateway forward to conventional tobacco products. So You may put two and two together and see what will be in the next edition of the code in that respect. But then into the causes then of vaping, I think it seems very clear that there have been clever strategic use of marketing through social media, online forms, targeting young people in ways I think that maybe have not been anticipated by the traditional public health community in terms of being viral and sensationalist and being able to get attention and reach young people through these means, which perhaps we overlook or don't yet have the capacity to be able to monitor trend and block. So I think they've been strategic and effective in using the digital forms of marketing, not just the packaging, the flavorings, these
but now this is quite scary because if we go to the packets of tobacco packets, and there are scaring photos and so on, but it seems to be that still they are appealing.
Well, I think there's always a plateau effect. So we have to rotate and use multiple different tools, strategies for discouraging behaviors and encouraging more positive behaviors. And what I think has been effective in terms of the vaping and e-cigarettes has been trying to use new technologies, the social media, the routes that exist to effectively reach young people and create this buzz and impact through peer-to-peer methods there. So it always comes back to having good policy regulation to be able to keep up to date with new forms of communication and regulate effectively to shut out these type of activities.
Another. Do you want to react?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that still today society don't understand that they believe that lung cancer is associated to old people. They don't have faces of young people. Mm-hmm. They don't talk about it. Even specialists, sometimes when I go to a doctor or, oh, you have lung cancer, they don't really understand how extended is lung cancer. So I think what we have to do from the government and everyone is to raise awareness from the young people, like children at school. Because if a youngster is at home and his parents or their parents are smokers, how are they going to tell their children, no, you don't have to smoke, you can smoke. You are smoking in front of them. So that's, I think society is not really used to what lung cancer is.
Yeah. But also seeing what he was screened in the video related to, there is a Spanish expression that says, until we don't see the wolf's ears, we do not act. So, and seems to be that in accordance to what we have seen in the video, in most of the cases, they were not aware that something could happen. So, what are the things that we need to do in this regard, and which are the actions that you would demand from especially from policymakers?
Talking more about lung cancer.
So do you think that they feel in some way guilty, but they don't want to act? Or?
There are a lot of feelings that you can experience during the journey. Guilty was not in my case. I never thought of lung cancer when I was 35, when I was 34, when I was looking for something because I was having different symptoms. The thing is that lung cancer don't give specific symptoms for everyone, or maybe you don't have any. It's just going to be a surprise. Well, it's always a surprise to have lung cancer. But I think knowing the symptoms, but not only coughing and smoking, and there are a lot more symptoms that can be shown. And I always talk about young people. I was very young, and there are younger people diagnosed with lung cancer. And I'm lucky, I'm here, so I can advocate, but it's difficult.
So which were the actions that you would demand? Perhaps it is exposing younger people.
More restrictive policies for tobacco, talking about lung cancer to people, television, like today in social media, there are so many people talking about stupid things. I think they should be talking about a disease that is killing a lot of people every day, every single minute. So there are a lot of things to be done. So, and we are doing it from IACAP. There are so many things that I could just start enumerating things and maybe we wouldn't finish.
And what about patients' participation in policies? Do you think that is enough right now? We are in the good path. It should be improved. What would you be demanding in this sense? Nowadays that you have some politicians in the room also.
So, yes, patient involvement and participation, I think that is crucial nowadays. So we need to incorporate patients before in shared decision making in all their processes, for sure. In order also to meet patient autonomy objectives. That's for, yes, first of all. And we need to establish also the channels for the participation of patients and family and caregivers. Their point of view and their experience is also important. So we should, they can have the place for how to make proposals for improvements. And we should maybe create periodic coordination itineraries with social entities and non-profit organization and patients association also, just to see how we can also incorporate or be in part of this involvement. And of course, we think that access to accurate information in everything, treatments, studies, sequelae, alternative, and in general, complementary information is essential for patients.
How we can fight nowadays that if we go to mass media, it is fake news. It is almost everywhere, and when you are looking at I would say academic sound, or I would say things that are based on good evidence and so on, how we can fight together, because one of the problems it is defining where to go in terms of having good information, or at least based on good evidence.
I think that's in the associations we have just documentation, information, complementary with good evidence, and I think that's we can work also together just to create just like some itineraries when we can have those all types of documentation, reports, podcasts. There are also new communication mass media ways to get this information just for patients and society in general, I would say. Yeah.
And I have another question for Carlin. That was we have seen a list in terms of the policies that we are implementing, especially around screening, that the participation from men and women differ. So and we have a huge here that we are quite, I would say, we follow quite the policies in general of the government. So we are. I would say that we trust on government policies that is not everywhere, but we have still the case of colorectal screening that the ratios of participation of men and women differ in a nice manner. So what about your insights from your experience with lung cancer? It is still the same.
We are now analyzing this, and we also found some gender-related differences, but it's also actually good to see that there are also a lot of things are not that different across genders. So, for example, the motivation to participate can differ. It was almost funny to see that men were more likely to participate because of a family member has some anxiety, so they but I think they were sent, something like that.
So women are the ones that are carrying men to to be on the screen.
Yeah, and women are more likely to have some distress about whether or not they get lung cancer or so. So yes, we can see some difference, but also there are a lot of similarities here, and so the small things might be different. So what we found also with the tailored recruitment is that we can handle that in the tailoring, because then you can have some specific information that's important to you, and that is really different. But we, for example, saw some differences in that. For example, women were less likely to like the videos, and men were more likely to appreciate it. But then the question is, for example, do you want to see humans in a video or just an animation? That also differs. So when you have a lot of different types of information, then you can handle that actually. There should be solutions actually for those differences, but it's not on population level. It's not that we, for example, we cannot say you have to invite women in a different way than men, because there are also a lot of things that are similar.
So they need different incentives.
The reasons, but it also depends on their lives and their experiences, and for example, experiences already with physicians, with healthcare, with hospitals, and so on. With also recognizing maybe some complaints. So it's not only gender specific. So what you can do best is that you provide information in a way that people can decide themselves what they would like to know, whatever, but that you make sure that the information is there in an understandable way. And what was also in relation to information, that for example in focus groups and questionnaires, that people said to us, you are so much emphasizing the disadvantages of lung cancer screening, but we have to. It's in our national guideline in the law that we have to provide all those details, and all people that we have in our focus groups and interviews say the same. Why are you doing that? And there was one participant who said, "You are focusing on radiation. I smoked for 50 years. Do you think that it doesn't matter to me?" But we have to inform people about that CT scanning is using radiation. So, but all of those people say, okay, it's fine that it is somewhere, but please inform in a short way, and just the main message, and let us know that all details are somewhere that we can find it. But please do not do this.
You were mentioning that there were different type of I would say, causes of lung cancer. We have been focused on tobacco. Obviously, there are some areas that we know in the world that they are more exposed because of environmental exposure. There are radon area, for example, in the case of Spain, we know that Galicia is one of the places, and some places in Catalonia also because of the granitic area of where they live. But there are other things that are related to occupational exposure. Where we were, where we are, and what we should change in occupational exposure, because that is also a main cause of lung cancer.
Well, I mentioned asbestos. Asbestos, of course, was singled out as a substance that had a lot of epidemiological evidence a long time ago, but still, as always, even with tobacco, they were struggling with. I had colleagues at my institute where I work who were involved in the preparation for the legislation. The fact is that in Slovenia we had first the ban on the use of asbestos, the production, and also a law on the protection of the populations that were suffering the consequences of exposure to asbestos. In the western part of Slovenia, in a narrow valley, there was a cement factory. So there were actually 3 big groups of victims of that factory. Of course, the first one were the people who were employed there. They bore the big part of the disease burden. But of course, there were also people who were still in the factory, and then it was dispersed around the valley. And there were also people like Veronica who were not exposed to asbestos directly, but of course it was flying around, and damages were attributed. Of course, now it was very challenging in the first place of what about other causes that you implied as well? What do we do with a heavy metal exposure and so on? And of course, it also raised the importance of protection at workplace. And I think based off
But you can see almost everywhere that we post some norms in terms of you need to wear this and the other. And if you go to some buildings and you can see workers that are not building even they require boots. So
well, I can tell you, one of my colleagues went to the shipyard at our coast, and they were maintaining ships in the dock. And she saw these men with only the masks that are famous now because of COVID, with FFP masks. And she said, excuse me, but why aren't they properly equipped? And even the officer for security at work said, well, our boss said that we don't have enough money for protection equipment. So this is the attitude. And of course, then you push the responsibility to the state and say, well, you know, this is something we couldn't control. I think that occupational safety is something that we have to take seriously, and that in terms of the disease that we are discussing today is equally important to the measures that we discussed around tobacco. Of course, I will make a loop, because one of the target groups for us when we were promoting secondhand tobacco protection were employed in catering industry. So we connected to the trade unions and we worked with the trade unions, but I will give you also one of the answers when we said to the owners of bars, we said, look, aren't you interested in protecting your employees? And they said, you know, when a waiter starts being trained to be a waiter, they know that they will work in smoke environment. So let's not be funny about it. And sometimes these actions have gone very high level. In Slovenia, we were exposed by this same group taking a legal action in front of the Constitutional Court because they said that we were limiting the commercial activity. But fortunately, the Constitutional Court recognized that health was supreme to the commercial freedom. But this is something that applies not only to tobacco and protection from tobacco products, but also on occupational safety. And I fully agree with the discussions from before. It is a political issue, of course, but it is something that affects more than just a specific population group.
Yeah, thank you, Tit. We have seen the 5th edition of the coding for cancer. And nowadays we are discussing about the European health data space. Seems to be that all our problems will be solved with certain data and artificial intelligence. Also, Caroline has been talking about that. But one of the things it is where it sets the coding with the health data space, and what could be the impact of the coding in combination with the European health data space, for example?
Well, for the European Code Against Cancer, the idea is this is a simple tool that's available for the mass population, very easy to read, understand, and to disseminate. It's typically promoted by governmental organizations, but also civil society groups, etc. It's even fits on one page. Those recommendations individuals can follow to reduce cancer risk. So this is something almost kind of analog in a way. It's even typically used by the promoters as posters, as handouts, and I think in the next edition will continue to be used in this same way. In regards to the European health data space, is something I would say more on a different perspective altogether. And when it comes to the European actions on health, healthcare, and cancer control, perhaps there can be some acknowledgement of the code within that, but I think the code is its effectiveness and its value for the future is not trying to chase the new technologies, new forms of communications, and always run towards these and adapt its messages according to what's current trends, current fashions, but to stick to the evidence and communicate these in the simple way possible for people, and then allow those who are engaging with the public, whether they're healthcare professionals or in civil society groups or in other roles, to find ways in which they can communicate this message in simple, easy and understandable way, which can mean even simple paper-based tools, or just speaking, just connecting one-to-one with individuals and to communicate there. So I see the code itself as something kind of old-fashioned in this kind of ways, trying to synthesize a huge amount of complex information into something digestible and intelligible without trying to cover all possible elements that are known to cause or contribute to cancer, but the most important things. And then how individuals are presented with this really relies at the more local level, community level, from the professionals, whether they're healthcare professionals or from NGOs, etc., to convey this in the most suitable way.
So I think it is time, we are almost done, and I think it is time for some questions from the audience. Decía que estamos acabando casi el panel y puede ser un buen momento para, si tenéis alguna pregunta, tenéis 5 expertos encima del escenario y puede ser un buen momento. Trataré de traducirlo en inglés. ¿Por qué no? Espera un momento, creo que podemos tener un micrófono. Además creo que has estado expuesto al vídeo.
Solo al vídeo.
Vamos a ver, bueno, me llamo Roberto. ¿Estáis vendiendo la inteligencia artificial? Yo creo que mal, porque la inteligencia artificial al final somos nosotros los que la alimentamos, la que le estamos metiendo los datos. No, ella no piensa. Creo que es fácil para trabajar, para sacar estadísticas, para todo eso, la rapidez que tiene y todo eso va a ser impresionante. Pero me da la sensación de que la estáis vendiendo como si fuese la panacea y no creo.
Algunos la estarán vendiendo, ¿no?
No, pero aquí se ha hablado como qué tal. Y otra pregunta es, realmente yo creo que la formación y la información debe darse ya en los colegios. Ahí es donde se debe de educar y todo eso, porque está pudiendo más las empresas y la publicidad que realmente lo que podamos generar o hacer nosotros en favor de que la gente no fume o tal, porque el vapeo ya es algo impresionante, o sea, es que lo lleva hasta los críos. Gracias.
So I will try to translate. He's Roberto, he's one of the patients, and he was saying 2 things that seems to be that we are selling artificial intelligence as the thing that is solving to. But he was saying, well, there are some good things in terms, but someone needs to introduce the data. So if there are no good data, finally it is not. So what is in reality what we can expect from artificial intelligence? And the second thing that he was explaining was related to, we are talking about health education, health literacy, and he was saying he was advocating to starting from the very beginning. So this, if we are nowadays talking about the people from 14 to 18 years old, that they are already vaping. So this, if we shouldn't do something at primary or even secondary school. So this, you are the experts who wants to be the first to react.
I always be a teacher. I am a teacher. Do I have to speak in English or Spanish?
I think
English.
English.
So I am a French teacher. I've been teaching for more than 15 years. And I never had speaking about smoke during my years of teacher. And I don't understand how now is still not doing it. They are not doing it at schools. So how I've been teaching French, which is super nice language.
Well, I heard yesterday.
Not talking about I was teaching 17 years old. Maybe one day I spoke about an article which was speaking about smoking habits and everything, but not really from year 5 or year 4. It's not something, and it's from IACAP, we are going to start doing it. There is a project and we want to do it, but how can you reach every single school in Spain, every single student? On the internet, they are speaking about how many grams of protein you have to eat per day, what do you have to do to exercise your... it's much simple. It's not so difficult, but people focuses somewhere else, not really in the important things.
Carlin, artificial intelligence or primary school?
Also a short reaction on it. In the Netherlands we have of course the same. And some pulmonologists and also pathologists, they started the initiative from a physician in the classroom, and with the idea that there are so many physicians and researchers, whatever, who are related to tobacco research, and going to there in your white coat, giving that lesson. It is about 1 hour, and it's a standardized lesson, and you can of course add some things or so, but from your own experience. But with all physicians and related people, how many lessons do you have a year? Just some lessons. So that is how we now are trying to cover actually all schools, and then focusing on the age just before the vaping. So between 11 and 13 years old. Yeah. So that is something that you really actually could try to improve. And of course in the first month there may be some physicians, but nowadays there's a whole database with all physicians, and based on postcode people were connected. So yeah.
Of course, lung cancer patient who don't look as a patient, because I'm under treatment. Yeah. I'm not I'm having my third line of treatment.
Yeah, but
who could say it? Not anybody.
Yeah, but that is also something what we also have with a lot of participants. Almost all participants said, I have now symptoms or whatever, and that is also the issue for the GPs. How? Because if there are real symptoms, in many cases, most all cases, the disease is already in an advanced stage. So that is why lung cancer screening works, because of this. Because otherwise you don't need lung cancer screening, because then you can wait until there are symptoms. If that's also in a stage 1, then I don't think that you need a screening program. So that is the difficult thing here also, that it is very hard to recognize. And there are a lot of patients who said, I'm on a treatment and I still have no signs of that there's something wrong in my body. Yeah.
Artificial intelligence, still. Who wants to react?
No, I think
I agree that, like with everything, there has to be a moderate approach or a balanced approach. One thing is that, and Carlijn spoke about the capacity, and I think radiology is exactly one of the fields where we see the advantages. No radiologist can have millions of images in their head to compare with. Maybe they could even remember some patients a decade ago, but they would still not remember the image. And the machine can do that. But of course, it is important to stress, as one of the professors who was actually teaching on that topic said, the final decision is done by a human. So whether this is...
But perhaps it is just because it needs to be by a human, or because we have fear about...
This is really also the thing that in our latest validations, that was what the presenter at that moment, it was really disappointing to see that AI was doing better than the most experienced radiologists. So that is also say something about the AI, but still there's need for more validation. More scans are needed, of course, for the algorithm to learn. But what we are now doing is that we are turning it around so that we rule out the scans without, for example, nodules. Mm-hmm. There are many scans. So then you try to concentrate your capacity in humans.
To focus on what is a real added value from the side of the experience. Yeah. That is the combination with
the pathology, the actual pathology. Yeah.
So I think we are reaching to the end. I wanted to have just one last reaction or sentence from your side, based on your experience and how to address. I will start from David. So I'm not starting from Stephanie. You will be the last one, so you will have the last word.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the importance, especially looking ahead, going to the future, the importance is on tailoring and personalization of all approaches that we use in a preventative sense. And to do that, a lot of the questions that have been asked here, we can give our opinions based on experience, expertise, knowledge, but we also need the feedback and the knowledge and expertise of the target group, the target population. And as we go more and more into an era of more individualized, personalized approaches, this feedback will be more and more important to be able to answer those questions. How do we effectively reach young people? How do we deal appropriately with this new screening in this new community? What's the best way to deliver it? What's the right strategies to use in terms of who to connect with, who to engage, to promote this, and so on. So to me, the future is more and more about this tailored approach rather than more general one-size approach, which we've been trained on.
So never again one size fits all.
Yeah.
Last words?
Well, I'm sure that Carlijn will will find this, what I'm going to say, familiar to her ears. Some orthodox epidemiologists, when the screening for lung cancer was researched and was starting, were saying this is not screening because we are not inviting everyone. Yeah. Screening is asymptomatic, equalized risk, everyone. If you want, by old terminologies, it's a high-risk monitoring, actually, like screening for cancer in former asbestos workers, for example. Nevertheless, I think it is important to realize that other screening programs are becoming also stratified. We have changes in cervical cancer, we have changes in breast cancer, so it's not the only screening that has these specifics and that has focuses on specific risks. So it is probably the first big cancer that will have a lot of stratification and that will have to be refined further down the road, including other risks, but also exploring moderate smokers probably in the next step.
Because we have seen that at least the ones that have been discovered, they are not aligned with the recommendations.
Yeah. Moderate smokers, because of course now the evidence is focusing on high-risk smokers, those who are actually also maybe behaviorally different, and behaviors that David was speaking of, I think they are very important. Studies in the past showed that heavy smokers are psychologically different from moderate smokers, and that they are less accessible to preventative measures. Part of what Carlene was saying confirms that, but this may also change in the future.
Carlene?
Yeah, I think that I already agreed upon the previous statements, but what I think it's very important, and to keep it relatively short, is that don't act upon a lot of pillars actually. So on policy level, on the smoking ban, but on preventing smoking, lung cancer screening. So try to do several interventions, and also respect your own interventions. So if you set a ban for smoking, then please set a ban for smoking. And if you want to implement lung cancer screening, implement lung cancer screening, so that you have multiple actions actually, because just one thing is not enough in the next years.
Thanks, Veronica.
So from the Association Against Cancer, we promote and highlight the need for...
But we are not calling a screening anymore, so this, that will be monitoring.
No more screening. So, no, for more humanization, more equity, more prevention, more awareness, more care, more research, more data.
And who pays?
We'll talk about that. To achieve more hope and more life.
Yeah, thanks, Veronica. Last words?
Okay, I'm going to say two things. The first is that from IACAP, we strongly believe in screening, even if most of patients are not in this first screening, but it has to be done because first prevention, which is no smoking, is not working. So secondary prevention is necessary. And the second is that society have to understand the really extent of lung cancer, and it's really a public health problem. And everyone with lungs can suffer from this disease. So that's why we have to really talk about this non-desirable cancer, because people still don't like talking about this cancer.
So thank you very much. It has been a pleasure trying to coordinate, although we haven't done, and they were not exposed to my questions before. So I wanted also to thank you all also for contributing, and a pleasure also to the audience. And I think we can conclude. So a bunch of applause to them also, because.
Okay, so we close this. We have more support for the Basque government. We have with us Gonçal, that is director, you have a very nice, of transformation planning and organization in health, and Guillermo Herrero, director of public health and addictions. So I give you the floor just to close this event.
Bueno, pues buenas tardes a todos, Arratsalde on guztioi. Good afternoon, everyone. I will go on in Spanish because I've seen we have a bunch of professional translators that I guess have a much better English than I do. Se acaba esta sesión, se acaba esta reunión, pero la buena noticia es que vuestro trabajo sigue. La buena noticia para mí, sobre todo, y para los pacientes. En nombre del departamento, yo solo quiero daros las gracias por el trabajo que habéis hecho, por el trabajo que vais a seguir haciendo y sobre todo por la generosidad de haber compartido todo vuestro conocimiento y vuestras experiencias esta tarde con nosotros. No quiero repetirme diciendo que el cáncer es la primera causa de muerte en Euskadi, que por eso es muy importante para nosotros, que lo es. No quiero repetirme diciendo que concretamente el cáncer de pulmón es la presentación más letal, que lo es, pero quiero utilizar esto para recordar que, poner como ejemplo que en el caso de las mujeres no hace tanto tiempo el cáncer de mama era el más frecuente y el más letal. Y en los últimos años, no demasiados, hemos ido viendo cómo ha ido disminuyendo radicalmente la letalidad del cáncer de mama mientras subía la letalidad del cáncer de pulmón y actualmente en mujeres, siendo menos frecuente, produce una mayor mortalidad. ¿Qué aprendemos de esto? Obviamente hay muchas causas que han influido en la disminución de la mortalidad asociada al cáncer de mama, pero todos estamos de acuerdo en que una fundamental ha sido el éxito de nuestros programas de detección precoz de cáncer de mama. Y esto nos marca el camino. Sabemos que la detección precoz del cáncer salva vidas. Y no solo salva vidas, ahorra sufrimiento y ahorra costes, lo cual nos permite utilizar recursos que ahora mismo utilizamos en una enfermedad para dar servicio a otras enfermedades que todavía no tratamos o a más pacientes a los que todavía no llegamos. De manera que esto ayuda a hacer nuestro sistema sostenible. Entonces, como veis, miremos de donde lo miremos, la detección precoz del cáncer siempre es una buena idea. Y aquí estáis vosotros, nos estáis marcando el camino para un más que probable futuro programa de detección precoz de cáncer de pulmón en Euskadi. Y esto me lleva también a nombrar, hablar un poco de mi libro. Una de las cosas en las que hemos dedicado mucho tiempo en el departamento en los últimos meses es a desarrollar el nuevo Plan Oncológico Integral de Euskadi 2550. Estamos muy orgullosos de él. Primero porque ya lo hemos acabado, esperamos presentarle en unas pocas semanas y ha sido un trabajo arduo. Gran parte de lo duro que ha sido este trabajo ha sido porque ha sido un proceso extremadamente participativo. Ha habido más de 200 personas, entre profesionales y pacientes, implicados en la creación de este nuevo plan oncológico. El plan oncológico se estructura en torno a 7 áreas prioritarias. Creo que son 35 o 40 objetivos principales y 140 acciones. Una de estas áreas prioritarias está dedicada específicamente a la detección precoz, con 5 objetivos y más de 10 acciones. Y nos da un mandato muy claro. Nos dice que en los próximos años, entre 2025 y 2030, tenemos que hacer lo posible por mejorar los programas de detección precoz de cáncer que ya tenemos y por introducir nuevos programas siempre basados en la evidencia. Y aquí estáis vosotros aportándonos evidencia de primera calidad para empezar a dar los primeros pasos hacia este posible o muy posible programa de detección precoz de cáncer de pulmón en Euskadi. Así que sin más, no me enrollo mucho más porque tiene que hablar Guillermo y porque todos estáis deseando tomaros algo, ir con vuestras familias. Una vez más, muchísimas gracias por lo que habéis compartido. Aquí hemos estado tomando notas porque de verdad creemos que las futuras políticas sanitarias del Departamento de Salud del Gobierno vasco tienen que estar basados no solo en la evidencia científica, sino en la escucha activa de lo que nos tienen que decir los profesionales y sobre todo los pacientes, que sois el porqué todos hoy estamos aquí. Muchísimas gracias. Eskerrik asko. Thank you all.
Arratsaldeon, gaur hemen entzundakoa inspirazioa eta konpromiso iturri izan dadila. Bueno, yo voy a ser breve por lo que ha dicho Gonçal, que estamos ya cansados. Quiero resaltar 2 cosas que para mí han sido muy importantes en esta jornada. Una de ellas ha sido el variar un poco el enfoque del cáncer de pulmón, que bueno, tradicionalmente es un enfoque asistencial, diagnósticos, tratamientos, avances y demás, y mostrarnos a todos un poco la perspectiva desde la salud pública. Y creo que en este sentido ha quedado patente que la importancia de esa perspectiva es total. Por un lado, el cribado es fundamental, lo que ha estado contando ahora Gonçal del impulso que hay que darle, porque estamos hablando de una enfermedad con una alta mortalidad y con un pronóstico relativamente bueno si se diagnostica precozmente. Entonces yo creo que todos los esfuerzos que podamos hacer en diagnosticarlo en los primeros estadios van por buen camino. Por un lado vamos a hacer más sostenible todo el sistema, que como todos sabemos cada vez es más complicado con los tratamientos y con los diagnósticos más sofisticados que tenemos, y por otro lado evitamos sufrimiento, evitamos que la población que lo sufre tenga una mala experiencia. Por otro lado, me ha parecido también que es muy reseñable el modelo de colaboración entre administraciones que estamos representadas, entre los centros de investigación, que han sido un poco los que han liderado todo esto, los profesionales sanitarios y, por supuesto, las asociaciones de pacientes, que en los últimos tiempos están tomando una relevancia que es la que deberían haber tenido, pero yo creo que últimamente se están teniendo mucho más en cuenta por parte de las administraciones, por lo menos el que podáis dar vuestra opinión y vuestro enfoque, sobre todo para lo que has comentado tú, humanizar mucho más todos estos procedimientos, que yo creo que es una asignatura pendiente. Creo que es un modelo a seguir. Quiero resaltar que desde el punto de vista de la Dirección de Salud Pública, este tipo de jornadas y este tipo de espacios son muy importantes porque podemos compartir opiniones diferentes, con enfoques diferentes, tener estrategias, alinearnos y seguir avanzando. Yo creo que es la forma de avanzar en todas estas patologías que son además muy complicadas desde el punto de vista del tratamiento hacia ellas, porque como hemos resaltado también es muy importante todo lo que tiene que ver con la promoción de la salud y con la prevención. Clarísimamente, en una enfermedad en la que estamos hablando que hasta el 40% se podría evitar, pues los esfuerzos también en ese sentido son muy importantes. Y nada más, agradeceros a todos los que trabajáis en esto, animaros a que sigáis en la misma línea y que entre todos podamos avanzar en el cáncer de pulmón. Muchas gracias, que ricasco.
Okay, so if you can see in the program, in the back, we have 2 people rowing together. So this has been painted by a Basque artist. It's called Iñigo Aristegui. And as a present to all of you that you have made possible this day, we want to give you a mark that has done for this event, for all of you. And I will ask, we are going to take a last picture here all together. So, los pacientes, por favor, nuestros voluntarios, subir para hacernos una foto. Ángel, Marian, Nerea, Roberto. Iñaki, Guillermo, Gonçal.